Welcome, everyone. Thank you so much for taking time out of your day to tune in. I'm so excited to speak about today's topic. So our title is Cozy Kitchen and, there we go, Calmer Lupus, Warming Foods for Winter Wellness. So that can mean so many things. Today, we'll go through just some basics about lupus. If you're new to Lupus LA, welcome. And after we cover the basics just about lupus in general, then we're really going to do a deep dive into those foods that are healthy for us year round, but specifically in these colder months. If you are living in LA, maybe slightly colder. If you're tuning in from somewhere else, it could be very much colder. And how we can use those seasonal foods to our advantage to calm down our lupus symptoms and have us feeling great. So I do have a little bit of a medical disclaimer that I'll go through. Basically, the information in this webinar is for educational purposes only. It is not meant to diagnose or treat medical conditions or replace your usual medical care. Always consult your healthcare practitioner for the most appropriate individualized medical care before making any lifestyle or nutritional changes. You've heard this before probably, but this information can be so helpful, but we don't replace going to the doctor. If you have any big questions about your symptoms, if you're not feeling well, please see your rheumatologist or your primary care provider or whomever else. So again, we'll go through some just basics about lupus. I do want to introduce myself. So my name is Tanya Freirich. I am a registered dietitian, and all on the places online that you can find me, I go under the name The Lupus Dietitian. I have almost going on 15 years of experience in the diet and nutrition field. I have my master's in nutrition, and in recent years have dedicated all of my attention in my private practice to helping people specifically with lupus and other autoimmune diseases, rheumatoid arthritis, Graves' disease, Hashimoto's. I'm so passionate about helping people with lupus because I also have lupus myself. When I was diagnosed 10 years ago, I had a lot of symptoms. I was quite overwhelmed with how terrible I felt pretty distinctly. And so I looked at all of the research for lupus. I implemented it for myself. Those diet and lifestyle changes were a game changer for me. So I now advocate for as many people as I can for the lupus community, and then share my nutritional expertise with clients and as much as I can on these free webinars so that everyone that has lupus at least can understand how diet is so important, how integral changing your diet and lifestyle can be to how you feel. So let's dive into some lupus information. First of all, there's different types of lupus. You may have heard from your doctor, oh, you have lupus nephritis, you have systemic lupus. Some people may be diagnosed with cutaneous lupus. So systemic lupus is affecting your whole system, so your whole body. Lupus nephritis affects your kidneys, and cutaneous lupus affects your skin. That can also include discoid lupus. Now, unfortunately, sometimes, often, cutaneous and discoid lupus may turn into systemic lupus. So whereas it started with only affecting your skin, it turns into affecting other parts of your body. The goal always with treatment and with changes to diet and lifestyle is to either make your symptoms more mild, less severe, and manage them, keep you in a really good place of remission. There's other types of lupus called drug-induced lupus, and it's in the name, so it is a type of lupus that's induced by drugs, medications. And then neonatal lupus is a type of lupus that affects babies usually because the person giving birth to them also had lupus. And so it's a temporary lupus that a newborn may be affected by. So what are the causes of lupus? Lupus is complicated. It is sometimes really hard to diagnose, and all of the mechanisms underneath it are not completely understood. But we do know that there's three kind of big areas that combine to contribute to lupus. So for example, genetics. We know that people that have a family history of lupus are at greater risk. So genetics must be playing a part. Additionally, we know when people have stressors in their environment, like infection, injury, trauma, stress, that can trigger lupus onset. And we know that hormones play a part. 9 out of 10 people with lupus are women or identify as women. And then also we see increased risk of flare and diagnosis when those people are going through puberty, menstruation, pregnancy, and that for some people, their hormonal changes during menopause actually reduce the severity of their lupus. Now, symptoms of lupus, this is a long list, and actually I'm going to go ahead and share my screen so that everyone can see this big long list and assess it yourself as I talk about it. There we go. Okay, so here are some symptoms of lupus. And as you can see, whoa, that's a pretty long list. Lupus can affect us in so many different ways. So some of the very, very common ones are the extreme fatigue, the pain or swelling in the joints, swelling in hands, feet, or around eyes. But people often feel very upset about the hair loss, the photosensitivity, the sensitivity to sunlight and UV light, butterfly rash, which is your malar rash right here. Also, mouth ulcers can be really uncomfortable and really affect our nutritional intake. Headaches are another symptom, brain fog, abdominal pain, nausea, vomiting, any sort of digestive distress can be a symptom of your lupus. Oopsie. Pardon that. Let's get that out of there. And then lupus can also affect us mentally in terms of the lupus brain fog I mentioned, but more so seizures and that low-grade fever. So these are sorts of things. Please talk to your doctor about it. Please make sure that you feel comfortable bringing these things up. I would always recommend keeping a list of anything that is strange or new between doctor's appointments so that you can make sure to get those concerns addressed. So this is unfortunate, but why nutrition is also so important. So the leading causes of death with lupus include that we have a greater risk for cardiovascular disease, fatal infections, because many of us are on immunosuppressants, and kidney failure, often because of lupus nephritis. So how can we live longer and healthier? So we can see our doctors regularly, focus on our diet, incorporate more movement. And notice I say movement and not physical activity. Reduce our stress, adequate sleep, and controlling our environment. So I like this one because you see how the arrows are kind of going back and forth. When we're thinking about nutritional changes, we want to think about your whole 360-degree view, because it's not just nutrition, it's also your lifestyle. And each component of this really interacts with each other to get you the best results. So yes, nutrition, but also movement. Mental health is so important, support, and environment. So let's dig into these examples. So for nutrition, I always work with my clients on considering potential dietary triggers and helpful food intake. So unfortunately, dietary triggers could be things that just make you feel really off. Maybe they cause a stomach ache, maybe heartburn, maybe a headache. So if these sorts of foods, and if you can notice which ones are causing the upset, you may want to avoid them, at least for 1 or 2 weeks, see if you notice any improvement. And then helpful food intake. There are so many really, really delicious and also nutritious foods that can really help with our lupus. Now, movement. This is so important for not only our cardiovascular health, that's our heart health, but also to prevent osteoporosis due to long-term steroid use. So if anyone out there, comments if you've been on prednisone or methylprednisone, prednisolone. They're all essentially corticosteroids. And unfortunately, while they do a fantastic job of kind of squishing the lupus inflammation, helping if you're in a flare, they're not great for our bones long term. And many people feel a little bit crazy while you're on it. It gives you kind of insomnia, a lot of energy. Sometimes people feel pretty emotional or angry while they're on prednisone or the corticosteroids. So some people do really well on them. They certainly always work in terms of reducing lupus inflammation and getting people to go from a flare to having that flare calm down. But because it affects our bone health so poorly, long term, we really want to make sure that we're getting some strength training, some impact exercise. So, for example, walking is great. Jumping on those little mini exercise trampolines is fantastic because that impact, and it's not a super aggressive impact, but just the up and down basically tells our bones, hey, you have a little bit of, it's not even an injury, but you're being utilized. So build up your strength. So that impact, the kind of up and down pressure on your bones, helps them build up better. So that's something to keep in mind. And for cardiovascular health, anything that gets your heart pumping is fantastic. For our joint health, anything that gets your joints moving is fantastic because you will feel less stiff. Mental health. So this one's so important, especially in this day and age. I feel like so many people are being more mindful of their mental health, but we want to manage our stress. Stress causes cortisol, causes our body to kind of start ramping itself up, and that is not helpful for an immune system that's already overactive. So try to think about the things in your life that are causing a lot of stress. And of course, hopefully with support with your family and friends, perhaps we can figure out ways around those. Coping with a chronic illness. So unfortunately, when you get diagnosed with an autoimmune disease, it can feel very heavy. It's something that now is your responsibility. You'll have to worry about. So that's hard. It's not easy. I suggest everyone out there that has the desire maybe to just mentally put it in the back of the closet and not think of it, we have to take it out every once in a while and have those moments of saying, I feel sad about this, or I'm frustrated about this. And it's a lot better for our mental health to actually have the emotion rather than kind of bury it away. Support. So please reach out to your medical providers, your friends, your family, support groups. Lupus LA has so many amazing support groups. So please don't miss out on the chance. I know so many of my clients and amazing people that I've met through Instagram and TikTok and all my social media that have lupus and didn't really think, I'm not so sure about a support group. They weren't excited about it, or maybe just felt nervous about it. And then they found it to be such an amazing experience. So I lead group programs so that people with lupus can all meet each other, and they find it to be really helpful to know that you're not alone, to know that other people are dealing with the same things. And then of course to share tips on, oh, that worked for you. Great. I'll give it a try too. And then our environment. So we want to reduce our exposure to pollutants and chemicals. Of course, if you are smoking, please stop. It is not great for us, and consuming less in alcohol intake. So where are we getting started with nutrition? That's what we're going to dive right into. So here's some examples of healthy plates, and then we're going to talk about specifically the winter foods that can go on here. But what you will see here is that every single cuisine that I put on here and in the world can follow this model. So we just want proportions of things. So we want 50% of the plate, no matter what types of foods are on your plate, to be vegetables. Then 25% to be our protein, and 25% to be something like rice, tortillas. It could be mashed potatoes. Now upcoming for Thanksgiving could be sweet potatoes, whatever that kind of starchy thing is. But you can follow, again, any type of cuisine can fit into this. It's just the proportions of the foods. And the reason why is that we need a lot of vegetables in our diet, ideally. We really don't need that many grains or starches. And then that protein, please, if you have lupus nephritis, if you have if you're on dialysis, if you have any sort of dietary restrictions regarding your kidneys, talk to your doctor, talk to a dietitian about the exact range of protein that would be appropriate for you, because some people do need to restrict their protein. And some people do better with a little bit more protein. All righty. So heart healthy nutrition. We do want to do things like reduce our salt intake. That's also amazing for our kidney health. So keep that in mind, that it can be something that's really helpful for a lot of reasons. We don't really need that much sodium in our life. We do want to reduce our saturated fat intake, particularly red meats, processed meats, deep fried foods. All of that helps raise our cholesterol, which we really don't want. Avoiding trans fats. These are generally pretty terrible for us. On the nutrition label, in the ingredients, it would be hydrogenated vegetable oil, and they have a line for trans fats. Thankfully, that is something that's getting cut out of our food system, but those are some examples. So it would be like margarines, processed snack foods will use trans fats because it helps them stay shelf stable for longer. However, the things we do want to increase are vegetables and fruits. Actually, anything with a lot of fiber. So a lot of vegetables or beans, lentils, legumes, nuts, seeds, all of these high fiber foods actually help our body lower our cholesterol by excreting it. So that's very helpful. And then we want to increase our healthy fats. So omega-3s, we usually don't get enough of these. There's been a lot of information and kind of concern about vegetable oils. Those are not as bad as people are telling you. They're making it seem like they're very toxic for us. That's just not true, but they are very high in omega-6s. So we're getting plenty of omega-6s. However, when it comes to omega-3s, we're not really getting enough of these. So that would be your olive oil, avocado oil, salmon, chia seeds, ground flax seeds, walnuts, almonds, avocados themselves. So really trying to increase our omega-3s is very anti-inflammatory. And here's some just nice examples. So why do we want to reduce salt intake? Is because it helps reduce our blood pressure. It helps reduce our fluid retention. So if you're on prednisone, if you have had lupus nephritis and you just often retain some more water and have some swelling, for example, your ankles or even in your hands, and you just retain water frequently, reducing your sodium or salt can be amazingly helpful for that. We want to reduce our red and processed meats because of the cholesterol, well, the saturated fat intake, which increases our cholesterol, and reducing the trans fat. So trans fat is also very inflammatory and terrible for our cardiovascular health. Now, here's some pretty examples of what we can do. So we can increase our fresh produce. That increases our intake of phytochemicals, antioxidants, vitamins, minerals. Choosing things that are higher fiber, that helps with our cholesterol and our digestion. It really feeds the good gut bacteria to have high fiber things, more complex carbohydrates. And then those omega-3s that I mentioned, they are also very anti-inflammatory. They help us feel satisfied and full after a meal. So I've got some general winter tips for us, especially if you have been diagnosed with Raynaud's. So Raynaud's is when your fingers and your toes might turn kind of this bright red color, blue, white. So essentially, whatever color your hands, your fingers and toes turn, it's a sign that you're not really getting that great of circulation, that your body's struggling in this cold temperature to regulate and keep the blood flowing to those extremities. This can be really dangerous if yours is kind of extreme, or if, for example, it continues to happen very frequently. You can even get ulcers on the tips of your fingers or toes from that lack of circulation. So what can we do? Definitely stay warm. So cover your hands. And the big things here are also our core temperature. So we'll talk about covering our hands in terms of, yes, keeping your hands warm, wear mittens or gloves at all times in cold temperatures. This sounds funny, but it can be really helpful, is keeping a pair beside your freezer at home so that when you pick through the items, maybe you've got to get to the bottom stuff, at least your hands are protected from those literally freezing temperatures. You can also bring these to the grocery store. So that way, when you're picking foods out of the refrigerated and frozen sections, your hands are protected. Consider investing in heated gloves or hand warmers if you're going to be outside for a long time or live in a particularly cold climate. Any people that are skiers out there, I know you've seen those little hand warmer packs that can go into your gloves or mittens, and they have reusable ones too. Now, that's all fine and good, but if you're freezing because core temperature wise, you're still really cold, that isn't going to help that much. So please layer up. Maybe it's a sweater and a vest and your jacket. Use a heated jacket. Enjoy hot tea throughout the day. Not only helps keep our hands warm, but keeps you warm too. And keeping our feet warm. So heavy socks are a great start, but don't double up on these heavy socks because that can cut off your circulation and reduce it further. And that's problematic too. So other winter tips in terms of medical care. So discuss the appropriate vaccinations with your doctors. So flu, COVID, pneumonia vaccines before going into the winter season may be appropriate for you or may not. So have that discussion with your rheumatologist. For example, live vaccines are sometimes not recommended for people with lupus. Now, changes in supplements or medications. So for example, vitamin D supplementation may be really helpful and necessary in the winter if your number always dips down because you're not getting enough sunlight. However, something like allergy medication, maybe you don't need it. Maybe that's something that you only need in the spring and fall. And then increased infections can lead to increased flares. So try to reduce your overexposure to germs, wash your hands frequently, wear a mask if you're going to be in a crowded place, like for example, on an airplane traveling, to just reduce your exposure, because every time we get an infection, our immune system says, oh, I have to do my job now, and then it can cause a lupus flare. Now, I've got some general holiday tips as well. So we want to reduce our stress. So acknowledge those feelings, whatever they may be. This whole season can be really hard, especially if we've lost a loved one, we've had a life change, maybe we've moved, gotten a divorce, gotten married, any sort of things that change our circumstances are generally going to have feelings associated with it. So stress, anxiety, grief, disappointment. So again, we're not burying the feelings in a box in the back of the closet because unfortunately they'll always seep out. And you may find yourself getting very upset over a very small thing because really you're upset about a very big thing. So have those feelings, address them, acknowledge them, speak to someone about it, journal about it. And then once we acknowledge those somewhat negative feelings, then we can prioritize our joy. So whatever of the holiday season is so important to you, maybe you're the most nostalgic for it, maybe it is a cherished habit or tradition that you have, prioritize that. Not only for people with lupus, but honestly, everyone. We can't do it all. That's just impossible. There's so much to do during the holiday season that you cannot do every event. So we have to prioritize the things that really mean the most to us. And our next point, say no. Say no to the things that do not bring you that much joy. If you can get out of something, just say you can't do it because you have finite amount of energy. And if you're going to spend your energy on the things that really, really are important to you, you will feel a lot more fulfilled and a lot less mentally exhausted. Now, prep and plan. I always recommend this. Set aside days and times to food prep and rest. But when you have your food prepped for the week, at least a few meals, you know you're going to be eating something that makes your body feel good, that's nourishing, and that's going to help you have energy for all of the other things. strategize. So bring your own food to the potluck. That way, you know, okay, well, there's one dish that I'm going to be really excited about eating, and I know I feel good after I eat it. Eat a full meal ahead of an event in which you know there isn't food that you're going to enjoy or that will make you feel good. Do less. So pare down the number of courses. If any of you are in charge of Thanksgiving, perhaps in the past you did X, Y, and Z. Maybe we just bring it down a notch. Honestly, we often are putting the most pressure on ourselves, and everyone else is really just happy with food in general and maybe didn't need all the bells and whistles on top of it. Pare down any obligations you have. So a lot of us just want to do it all, and I totally understand. But if there's something that perhaps you can get some support on, that would be really helpful for you, probably. Ask for help. So ask your friends and family to help. Maybe go to a potluck style for some events, or honestly, maybe get something catered, or have something that's like maybe not 100% homemade with a couple shortcuts. For example, sometimes people insist on making their own pie crust. Maybe we just buy a pie crust every once in a while. So if you have any shortcuts that can save you a lot of effort, fantastic. Be realistic. So when you're looking at your schedule, I think we're all hopeful and very optimistic about what we can do and how much energy we're going to have. But it is better to be proactive. Give yourself time for rest versus, oh my gosh, I am so exhausted. And now I've caught a cold and I need to be at home laying down for the next 4 days. And then your body has chosen the time for you to rest versus you get to choose the time if you can make those breaks ahead of time as part of your schedule. And then hopefully you don't miss the things that are really important to you. Don't overextend yourself in terms of your budget either. That's a big source of mental stress. And then take time for self-care. So your breaks, your sleep, physical activity, deep breathing, meditation. Now we're going straight into the winter foods, things to be cautious with, things to include, and I am going to go through some really yummy recipes so we all have some good ideas of where to get started. So let's take caution with these sorts of foods. So high fat foods, high salt foods. That could be, honestly, all of those like little fried appetizers that you can find places, mozzarella sticks, tater tots, like all of those kind of nibbly, deep fried, salty, breaded foods are likely not that great for us. In terms of the party season, it may be like the charcuterie board. Those are all pretty high in fat and high in salt. So it can kind of range from outside foods to even things that you'd be served at a home. But unfortunately, these are like, let's say if we're thinking of that plate again, it's more like the little once in a while foods. We really don't want to fill the plate with those sorts of foods. Ultra processed foods. So my example for the holiday season is like on one end, there may be the processed snack cake that sits on the shelves for who knows how long, and the expiration date is like 2 years away, versus a homemade apple pie, where if you went and picked the apples, that's fantastic too, but maybe the apples just came from the store and you know all the ingredients that went inside. That's still a dessert, but it's a whole lot less processed. If you made a list of the ingredients, maybe it's 10 or 15 and you can pronounce all of them, versus a snack cake that might have 50. Excessive alcohol. So I know 'tis the season where a lot of people feel a lot of pressure to consume alcohol, and you don't have to. If you want to consume a little bit of alcohol, that could be the happy medium for you. So what I do recommend is people take it slow, try not to drink too fast, maybe have an alcoholic drink, especially a mixed drink. You can control how much alcohol goes in there, so you can make it pretty light. And then alternate, have a glass of water next, and then another alcoholic drink. People at this day and age should not be pressuring each other to drink, but sometimes they do. So if you want to, you can always have a very light mixed drink that you make yourself. And then your alternate can look like an alcoholic drink. So for example, maybe it's seltzer with lime, that kind of looks like a vodka soda. Other examples, I'm sure everyone has one or two in their mind as well. But that's a good way to taper down how much alcohol you drink throughout the night so that you don't feel terrible the next morning. Excessive sugar. This is so hard also during this time, but I promise you it's not impossible. So try to say no to the things that aren't, again, your favorite. Try to really prioritize. If I'm going to have sugar, I'm going to have, I don't know, my auntie's favorite cookies and that recipe that I love so much. So have your sugar. This is not a plea to say no to absolutely everything that maybe is special about the season, but you don't want to feel bad. So let's try to just taper it down or temper how much you have and be careful about those portion sizes. Now, I put this list, the gluten, the dairy, the egg, the soy. Sometimes people have some reactions to these foods, so I would just be mindful and pay attention to what your body is telling you, and you may get a lot more information than you think. Nightshade vegetables. This one's another one, depends on the person. Some people react to these foods and some don't. I would recommend everyone stay away from tartrazine, also known as yellow number 5. This is artificial coloring that gives us no nutritional value, but has been shown to upregulate lupus symptoms. Alfalfa seeds and sprouts, I would also tell people just avoid these. They have also been shown to increase our lupus disease activity. And artificial sweeteners, I really just don't, I'm not a fan of these for many reasons. You could get me talking for about 15 minutes specifically on artificial sweeteners, but even the World Health Organization has noted that artificial sweeteners increase our weight, increase our risk for cardiovascular disease, and our risk for diabetes. So I would actually tell you to just go ahead and have a little bit of real sugar or honey or maple syrup rather than a whole bunch of artificial sweeteners. All right, continuing on. So getting into those winter vegetables that are really helpful for us. So cruciferous vegetables. This is a whole family of delightful vegetables: broccoli, cauliflower, cabbage, Brussels sprouts, arugula, bok choy, collard greens, horseradish, kale, radishes, rutabaga, turnips, watercress, and wasabi. And this family is so helpful because it is so anti-inflammatory. So plenty of ways to enjoy it as well. You could serve raw in a broccoli salad, roast with olive oil, and any selection of seasonings. People like cabbage soup. Cabbage can also be fermented as kimchi, sauerkraut, coleslaw. You can smash and roast Brussels sprouts. Chef's kiss, so delicious. Arugula salad, you can put kale in a smoothie or saute it with eggs. And then collard greens with smoked turkey is a very Southern thing. So if that is something that's a tradition for you, great. It is a great way to get a cruciferous vegetable in. And so here's a recipe. I wanted to share some really, really easy things that people can take away from today. So if you're watching, you can always screenshot this. And I think we've shared the recipe cards as well. But easy oven roasted broccoli. So it is 2 pounds of broccoli. You are welcome to use fresh, but also frozen works. The timing may just change a little bit for how long you're going to roast them if they're frozen, but you can roast frozen veggies and they come out great. Olive oil, salt, and pepper. So that's the basic one. And then you see in this bottom right corner that I've given lots of other ideas for seasonings. So garlic, rosemary, sage, parsley, tarragon, thyme, turmeric, red pepper flakes, paprika, onions, and lemon juice. Now, I want to have comments about each one of these though. Garlic. Some people out there with lupus are sensitive to garlic. They may notice that your lupus symptoms go up when they're consuming a lot of garlic. Now, other people actually do better when they consume garlic. So that's a whole nother, again, I could speak for 15 minutes on the topic, but that's just one to pay attention to. Now, the other ones on here, the red pepper flakes, and paprika. Paprika is a spice that's actually just made from dried bell peppers. So both of those are in the nightshade family. So if you are sensitive to nightshades, then I would just be careful. Maybe don't use those. Turmeric, however, is very anti-inflammatory. So turmeric's one of those spices that honestly is really easy to add to a lot of things. It's in a lot of spice mixtures for things like curries. It can go on chicken. You could put it on something like this roasted broccoli, and it could be really delicious. It changes the color, of course, it's bright orange, but not a super strong flavor. And so this one is just preheating the oven, washing and chopping the broccoli, and then tossing it in the olive oil and whatever seasonings that you'd like. And then you put it in the oven. You don't have to do anything. It's a very passive recipe, which I understand when our energy is something that maybe is in short supply, then we don't want something that you have to stand over the stove and constantly paying attention to. So if we've got something that you can prep and put in the oven, fantastic. So turmeric, now we're going to talk more about this. So curcumin is the active ingredient in turmeric. So we've got so many benefits from it. It reduces our IL-17, that's a cytokine production. That cytokines increase our inflammation. So when we're reducing that, that means we're reducing our inflammation. It can help with reduced blood pressure, reduce protein in the urine, reduce blood in the urine. So if lupus is affecting your kidneys and you've been told you have protein or blood in the urine, then turmeric may be something that's really helpful to include in your diet. For everyone out there, if you're thinking about taking supplements, always talk to your doctor about it first. Make sure that that supplement, the dosing makes sense, that it is not too high or too low, so that you get the most benefit out of it. Supplements can be really expensive. So how to use? You can make turmeric tea. You can use it in seasoning mixes, in curries or soups. And if you can find the fresh turmeric at the grocery store, that's a great thing to use too. But the powder is also great. So I put in a recipe here for some turmeric scrambled eggs. Yum! Scrambled eggs obviously are so fast to make. This one, this recipe includes coconut oil and that garlic clove. So if you're sensitive to the garlic, then maybe skip that. It also adds spinach. Yay! Great way to get in a vegetable. And this is for multiple servings. So you see this is 4 large eggs. So perhaps that's for 2 people. And they're adding coconut milk and turmeric. So it's almost like a curry type flavor because the coconut milk is a nice flavor and in a lot of curries. And so is turmeric. So that's kind of a fun way to mix up a very basic breakfast. And it's fast. I mean, it takes maybe 5 minutes to do this start to finish. You're welcome to use fresh spinach, or this is another place where you can use frozen spinach. And so don't drive yourself crazy. Don't make life harder. Simple and convenient is still great. Squash and pumpkins, yum. So definitely a fall and winter specialty. It is packed with beta carotene, which is the precursor to vitamin A. Vitamin A is incredibly important for our eye health, for wound healing. It also can help reduce our inflammation. So in terms of how you can use them, lots of ways. You can roast them, you can blend them into soups, add them to smoothies, and oftentimes they give kind of a creaminess. So the vitamin A can help reduce your autoimmune activity, and it's a very potent antioxidant. So the recipe that I included is spaghetti squash with chickpeas and kale. So spaghetti squash is a super fun squash. Honestly, all you have to do is cut it straight down the middle, roast it, and then take a fork, and it's like the squash comes out almost looking like spaghetti, like in little strings. And it's very yummy. So this one's with olive oil, shallot, garlic, rosemary, and then the cooked chickpeas, chopped up kale leaves. You can add these other bonus things like lemon juice, sun-dried tomatoes, capers, or olives. So pick whichever you're most excited about, toasted pine nuts. And then we're roasting again. So now we're getting our kitchen again nice and cozy, and then calming our lupus with these foods. And this one is also a pretty easy recipe. Apples. So if you live in the part of the world or part of the states where you can go apple picking, that's nice. Apples are a great source of quercetin. Quercetin is a flavonoid found in fruits and veggies and some other foods that is very anti-inflammatory, very high in antioxidants, and also may have some anti-cancer effects and cardiovascular benefits. It can also specifically help with lupus nephritis. So it can decrease our plasma levels of BUN, creatinine. It improves our kidney tissues. So that can be very, really helpful. And then reverse some protein expression, basically inflammatory processes. Cinnamon. So don't worry, there's a recipe coming with both apples and cinnamon, but cinnamon is very beneficial in rheumatoid arthritis. So it can help reduce inflammatory serum levels of CRP, TNF alpha, lower our blood pressure, and reduce our disease activity score. And then benefits in lupus is that it may reduce oxidative stress. And here's our recipe. So an apple cinnamon baked oatmeal, yum. This is, again, one of those things that you can prep ahead of time and then you reap the benefits multiple days in a row. So you've prepped this, maybe it's with apples, this one's with rolled oats, flaxseed, yay, good source of omega-3s, and then all of these amazing spices, cinnamon, nutmeg, allspice, cardamom, ginger, and then a non-dairy milk, a little bit of maple syrup. You can certainly add less maple syrup than is included in here, and I bet it's still going to taste delicious, vanilla extract, and then walnuts. So you can prep this casserole-sized dish of overnight oats or baked oatmeal and have breakfast every day of the week. So let's be smart with our time and our precious energy and make sure not to overextend ourselves. So here are kind of the summary of some helpful changes that perhaps you can keep in mind over the holiday season. So calorie restricted diet. I don't want anyone to go hungry. Please don't do that. But let's not eat over excessively, where we're like, oh my gosh, I'm so full, that was too much, almost to the point of feeling ill, is not a great recipe for us to feel good. Those omega-3s, increasing our intake of unprocessed foods, eating more plants. That doesn't mean you can't eat animal-based products, but we generally most people are not doing so great with our vegetable intake, so let's increase that. Quercetins, like found in the apples, cruciferous vegetables like our broccoli, promote your gut health, have things like turmeric, green tea, cinnamon, ginger are all so, so helpful. So to wrap this up, this is me. Find me at my website, www.thelupusdietitian.com. You can email me or follow me on literally any social media site as The Lupus Dietitian. I would be so, so happy to answer any of your questions. If you're interested in any of my nutrition services, whether it's one-on-one or group, please reach out to me. I am so excited to help anyone with lupus feel better with their diet and lifestyle changes. So I really, really appreciate being invited today, and Lupus LA, I'm so happy to be here. Thank you.
Awesome. Thank you so much, Tanya. We really appreciate your time. That was really, really helpful.
Great.
I just wanted to ask if we can answer a quick question.
Of course.
So, is there any way that you have tested in the past, like being sensitive to nightshades or garlic? If people aren't currently doing it and they're thinking of introducing it, do you have any just personal recommendations from your experience of doing that?
So usually what I recommend people to do with any food that they feel like they might be sensitive to, so maybe it's the nightshades, maybe it's the garlic, maybe it's a multitude of other triggers, is try to pick a week that you know you're not going to have a lot of meals outside of your home, that you're mostly like having your usual routine and you're eating mostly things that you always eat. And that's the perfect week where I would introduce a small portion of it. Of course, if you know you have an allergy to anything, please don't try this. You should avoid those foods. But if you just feel like, maybe it's an intolerance, maybe I don't feel so great afterwards, introduce a small portion and then just monitor yourself for, let's say, the next 3 to 5 days. Did I get a stomach ache? Did I get a headache? Did I notice any increase or change in my lupus symptoms? So that's what I would recommend. So that way you're paying attention to reincorporating food. And that's based on the presumption that you've eliminated it. Now, if you have not eliminated the nightshades or the garlic, then what I would do before this reintroduction time of introducing a portion when you're kind of in your usual routine is maybe for 2 to 3 weeks, try to avoid it and see if anything improves. So it depends where you are in that journey, but you can definitely play around with this in terms of checking in with your body, having a great communication with how you react to foods, and really be able to figure out a lot about your body and your connection with certain dietary either helpful things or things that increase your lupus symptoms.
That is so helpful. Thank you so much. We actually have one more question. So I know this is a bit of a tough one, but in your personal experience and in your practice, what is the best like main dish for Thanksgiving or any other holiday meal that's the lowest lift for lupus patients in terms of energy or standing for a long time? Is there like a key side dish or a key type of protein that's maybe the easiest to pull off for somebody that is, doesn't have a lot of energy, but they've taken on the meal?
Yeah, that is such a great question. And I'm so glad you asked because that is perfect for this time of year. I would say something like, yes, the turkey is like a quintessential Thanksgiving thing. If your family doesn't care about turkey, a baked ham is also very easy. I'm thinking in my head something that you can prep ahead of time. Maybe you put whatever seasonings that you want on it, and then just put in the oven for 3, 4 hours. So those would be the two that I feel like are very easy to put in the oven and then not pay attention to. Some sort of roast pork, like a ham or the turkey. If we're going a little bit crazy and like, okay, let's really think outside of the box. Maybe it is something that's just not a Thanksgiving thing. So maybe instead of taking on the whole roasting of a Thanksgiving turkey, which are generally very big and time consuming, is maybe we just do those little cute Cornish hens. We're still having poultry. It's much smaller. It roasts a lot faster. And so that way you're in charge of being in the kitchen, paying attention to this thing for a much shorter period of time. Or maybe we just buy a baked ham or a roasted turkey from somewhere else. There's a lot of restaurants now that are doing it for people because I think they recognize that it's really exhausting. So maybe you can do the side dishes, but we're bringing in the outside protein. It's a tough question because a lot of these are really big cuts of meat. It depends on how many people you're serving too.
Yeah, I feel like it's a little bit different for everybody depending on your circumstances and what your
Yeah.
goals are for sure. Well, thank you so much for joining us today. We really, really appreciate your time. And for anybody who is interested in joining more of these lives, we'll put the link to join the Lupus LA community in the comments so that you'll get all of our emails and you'll be notified when we're having more experts on like Tanya. And Tanya mentioned the importance of support earlier, and we have a variety of different monthly support groups, whether it's, bilingual support, teen support, young adult support, caregiver. You can really find something that works best for you. And they're open to anybody globally in the lupus community virtually each month. So we'll put the link in the comments as well for that if you'd like to join us for any of those. And thank you so much for your time.
Yeah, thank you so much, everyone. Happy holidays. I wish you the best Thanksgiving, and try to make it easy for you as possible.
That was so